But let me start with the tariffs. First, a little bit of background. What was said by the chairman of the Federal Reserve, J. Powell. So, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said that he expects President Donald Trump's tariffs to raise inflation and lower growth, and indicated that the central bank won't move on interest rates until it gets a clearer picture on the ultimate impacts. What he says that the outlook right now it's highly uncertain, and the next words are direct quote from Powell. Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and make certain that the one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. We're well positioned to wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance. It is too soon to say that what will be the appropriate path for monetary policy. While tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation, it is also possible that the effects could be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored, on the size of the effects and on how long it takes for them to pass through fully to prices. Let me explain something. So in the beginning, after President Trump pushed the button on stopping the tariffs for 90 days, but of course not all tariffs were stopped. First, he increased to 125% the tariffs on China, which means embargo. Then he kept the 10% overall tariff for everybody. And then we have also in place the 25% on steel, aluminum, and cars. So that's why in the first day after the decisions, the markets were happy. Now they're not that happy because the issue is not resolved. First, those outstanding tariffs have an effect. Then we are not talking about lack of tariffs, but of stop for 90 days. So we don't have clarity. What this policy is doing, of course, the most important thing behind the decision to go on those political decisions and to introduce higher tariffs is to close the deficit of the US budget, which is great. From one point to get a little bit more money from the tariffs. On the other side, to have the Doge initiative headed by Elon Musk and his team and to reduce governmental spending. The problem is when you impose tariffs. So imagine that you import whatever, sneakers, you import any kind of equipment, for example, for fitness, doesn't matter what, from any country with a tariff. Let's say they have the 10% tariff. It means that when it gets to the US, the importer should pay this 10%, but afterwards, of course, he should get them back somehow, and the only way is to increase prices. The whole question is, if you don't increase prices, you must reduce your profit, your revenue. And of course, you have probably a partner in the US. You might decide to split it, not split it, depend on what is the negotiation between the two parties. Why actually Trump decided to pause the tariffs? Because what happened was that the bond market was hit. When you hit the bond market, it means that the interest paid by the state and will be higher on bonds. It means that will be even higher for anybody else from individual states in the US, and it will be even higher and higher and higher for companies. And then what happens? It happens that you introduce inflation. Inflation goes through the whole system, through the prices, and partially, probably later on, to salaries. And when you start producing whatever you produce in the US, it becomes not cheaper, but becomes overly expensive. So if you are selling your product in the United States, probably you're kind of fine and it's okay. But you have problem to export your product to another country because it's too expensive. Even if the other country does not impose tariffs, your cost is too high. That's why bringing manufacturing back to the US is not that easy. It will be always more expensive. There was a reason companies went abroad to produce. And also, the other thing, it's not only goods, it's services. And if you don't look at the whole board and you don't add services, and there you have Microsoft, you have Apple, you have Meta, meaning Facebook, you have X, you have many others, then it's a totally different story. Because on services, there is a huge share of the United States all over the world. And then if you do the calculation of the trade deficit, including that, it's a totally different story. What it's done by introducing the tariffs is actually adding huge instability, and instability leads to reduction of investment. That's why nobody will be rushing to invest in the US soon. And right now I'm going to quote a very smart guy. I have some of his books. I read them, Ray Dalio, who is the founder of Bridgewater. What he said about the situation, because he, of course, made comments about the tariffs, but here I will quote something else. So, the massive tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump are just one part of a breakdown of the major monetary, political, and geopolitical orders, said Dalio. This sort of breakdown only occurs about once in a lifetime, but they have happened many times in history when similar unsustainable conditions were in place. Very little attention is being paid to the circumstances that caused them and the biggest disruptions that are likely ahead. And he listed 5. First, the monetary/economic order is breaking down because there is too much existing debt. The rates of adding to it are too fast. Second, the domestic political order is breaking down due to huge gaps in people's education levels, opportunity levels, productivity levels, income and wealth levels, and values. Third, the international geopolitical order is breaking down because the era of one dominant power, the United States, that dictates the order that other countries follow is over. Fourth, acts of nature, droughts, floods, and pandemics are increasingly disruptive. And fifth, amazing changes in technology, such as AI, will be highly impactful to all aspects of life. So uncertainty grows. I will not go in deeper into those things that Ray Dalio said, but there are major issues connected to all those processes that will make the world more uncertain in the near future. And if you follow the channel, you will listen to me speaking about all of them.